Dear students, good evening. Welcome to Law Excellence IAS. Let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, that is 2nd February 2021. Today all the articles are related to budget and we will be discussing the editorials related to budget, and there is one more article that is related to coup in Myanmar and India's position on that. The first article, carrying over fiscal conservatism. In this, author expresses three major points. One is the private capital is given importance. It means that the taxes are not raised. And the second, the self-restraint is applied in the case of spending by the government. Finally, the government did not move away from this path of fiscal restraint. These have been stressed in this article. Any article related to budget, you need to talk it in two ways. One is expenditure and the other is revenue. So, receipts we call it as. Again, expenditure, revenue expenditure. We have capital expenditure, revenue receipts and capital receipts. So, disinvestments, these are capital receipts. And then capital expenditure, it majorly related to long-term expenditure, long-term infrastructure related expenditure. All this comes under capital expenditure. Revenue receipts are tax and non-tax receipts. These are the things which we have to focus here on. If you see the expenditure of the government last year, that is 2020-21, when we have faced the crisis, the government has stated to have announced many of the mini budgets fiscal stimulus. Here the author says that it may not be true. What is the author is trying to say is the total expenditure increase is just 1.5% of the GDP, which is very less. And second, if you go by the budget estimates and revised estimates, the difference between what is estimated, what is actually spent, that is not more than 13.4%. It means the government fiscal stimulus is very weak in India. And let us see how the government is trying to do in 2021-22 budget. The expenditure increase in budget is only 0.95% over the revised estimates. It means over this 13.4% increase, another 1% increase close to that is being done. And overall, if you see, it is 14.5% increase over the original budget estimates. So it means the expenditure is not focused even this year. And last year, the capital receipts, especially the receipts due to disinvestment, the capital receipts did not reach the mark. The government expecting more than 2 lakh crore rupees, it is not even close to 15% of that. That is how the government fallen flat on that. And next, let us see revenue expenditure of the government. The one objective is job generation is the government's objective. So most important program is MG Many of the people are advocating for Urban Employment Act and there is no such a thing government is looking at. So MG allocations also have decreased. Last year the total amount spent by the government is 1.11 lakh crore rupees. This year the amount allocated is close to 73,300 crore rupees. It means that the MG like rural development and employment generation programs did not get priority. And next, food subsidy. It appears that the food subsidy allocations went up by 3 times. Is it really true? No. What the government used to do is, India has something called cash accounting. When the government pays the money, then only it enters into account books. And government do not pay the money directly from its accounts. And government asks the Food Corporation of India to borrow from other sources, NSSF, National Social Security Fund, etc. So that's where the expenditure or food subsidies do not reflect in the budget accounts of the government. These are reflected as off-budget liabilities. So in this case, government has to pay off these off-budget liabilities at some other date. So over 3 years, the budget allocations were low for these food subsidies. These are actually paid from as a loan from NSSF. In this case, the government is paying that money back. That's why food subsidies actually appeared to have increased. But in reality, the food subsidies have decreased this year. And the next, the tax base erosion. In the case of receipts, the tax base erosion is a major problem. One is the taxes are not increased. This is one case. Second, faulty implementation of GST has also led to the fall in tax revenues. So the tax base erosion is a major problem. And coming to other things, The health expenditure. Government claims that it has raised the health expenditure by 137%. Let us see it carefully. Health is defined as health and well-being. It means health related factors also have come under this expenditure, like drinking water and sanitation. It means that Jal Jeevan Mission has got huge improvement in allocations. What is the Jal Jeevan Mission? It aims to get piped drinking water to every house. So this Jal Jeevan Mission also has come the part of definition of health and well-being. That's why health expenditures appear to have grown by 137%. Next is mass vaccination program has got close to 32,000 crore rupees. This 32,931 crores to be specific is one-time expenditure on vaccination. So that's why the real expenditure and long-term infrastructure creation on healthcare expenditure is not sufficient. It actually decreased from 70,000 to 60,000 around crores. But definition of health is broadened with well-being, where drinking water and sanitation also brought into that. Next, infrastructure spending is expected to go up by 35%. So, where this money comes from? That is the bigger question. The government intends to develop a developmental bank or developmental finance bank, which is going to provide for long term funding to the infrastructure. The major problem with commercial banks is there is liability maturity mismatch, because the infrastructure projects takes longer time to get matured, and in the meanwhile the banks may face the financial stress. So that's why long term developmental financial institutions are being thought about. And the second is disinvestment goal is close to 1.75 lakh crore rupees. Again, government is high for disinvestment. And the second is sale of permanent assets of the PSUs like land. So this is how the government wants to source the money. So by the past experience, can this really happen, is the doubt expressed in this article. Let's go to the next article. Despite some hits, the budget has crucial misses. Let us try to understand this article. Remember one point, government wants to fund the infrastructure projects through developmental finance institution. Where this developmental financial institution is going to get its money from? So the government says that the funding will be from foreign portfolio investments or FIIs. So these are short-term investments, and these short-term investments are being used for long-term investments or long-term expenditure. So this is the basis for ASEAN crisis, which is also famously called East Asian crisis. So in this case, let us be careful about it. So the 34.5% close to increase in infrastructure investment is going to come from disinvestment, developmental finance bank, and then asset sales. In this developmental finance bank, how it is going to work, where it is going to get its funds? If it is from FPI, the base of these funds is not very strong. And the second is the investment the government is going to make on capital expenditure is expected to crowd out the capital investment for private sector. So let us see, this may not be proven in the case of India. More the amount spent on infrastructure has brought in more private investments into economy. Normally this crowding out of capital due to government spending money and government financing a debt is not proven in the case of India. I may not agree with this particular argument. Next is, the budget has very little to say on employment. So MG Narega is not given due priority. And we all have expected that, as like in Argentina, Brazil, the super rich may get taxed. Because of this, the revenues of the government may go up. There is no tax on super rich. These are the highlights of this article. Next is getting back on track. So this year, the fiscal deficit is estimated after the revised budgetary estimates. It will be close to 9.5%. The next year, it is going to be close to 6.8%. So one thing which the government did is it has kept its fiscal deficit on leash. Remember, the total state and the central together, the fiscal deficit is expected to be 15%. The center also has given a free hand for the states to borrow more if it is necessary for capital expenditure. It means long-term capital expenditure which can create jobs, which can create impact, which can generate revenue that is being prioritized. In this way, we have a right vision for this budget. But on the other side, various social welfare schemes which are related to pensions or which are related to food security, these are being not given priority. So in this context, this budget is a boon and a bane both. That is what this article says. A promising budget with few disappointments. Whenever the Govind Rao's article comes, I take a serious look at this particular article. So let us try to understand here. The first, he says that what is the function of a budget? What is the disposable income the people are going to possess that comes out of the budget? Because how much is the tax levied, etc., comes over here, no? The second function is it explains about the financial state of the government. It gives the balance sheet of the government. It also sets macroeconomic policy environment. And then after this, it provides for certain reform signals. So let us try to understand these cases from this particular budget. You know that pandemic made the government balance sheet to go way off the limits. The second is counter-cyclical fiscal measures are initiated, but their impact cannot be sufficient. You know, already I told you that 1.5% is only the increase of government expenditure. And this year also, government is trying to increase the expenditure but it is not abundant. And this year, the tax and non-tax receipts of the government are expected to increase by 15%. And government is also increasing, betting high on disinvestments at 1.75 crores. On the other hand, government is keeping high leash on expenditure. The expenditure is only 0.95% increase over the revised estimates. It means the government is again trying to bring back the fiscal deficit to 6.8%. So, health and defense, they got the highest allocations. But health allocations are being redefined as health and well-being. Some jugglery of words is done. The defense has got the highest budget, there is no doubt about it. But overall, the defense expenditure trend, our defense expenditure is actually coming down. The most important part of this article is what are the reform signals given by this thing. One is the banks are getting recapitalized up to 20,000 crores. Two public sector banks are getting privatized along with the Air India and Shipping Corporation, these like companies. So it means there is a privatization push. A bad bank is being created to take out the NPAs of the banks from their accounts. Asset reconstruction company and asset management company. And insurance sector, especially public finance sector, that is going for privatization. So LIC is expected to get a privatization push, and FDI in insurance sector is being raised up to 74%. And long-term financing bank, that is developmental financial institutions, are also being brought in. That way, this is the reform agenda of this particular budget. A budget that fails to address the hunger pandemic. In India, hunger is highest in the world. India has the burden of largest malnourished children, and pandemic made this particular hunger worse. How did the budget try to address this hunger? That is what we are going to see in this article. So, National Nutritional Mission. The basic problem in Indian fight against hunger is underspending. Let us see last year. The amount of money allocated, the money actually spent either on Anganwadi programs, National Nutritional Mission, Pradhana Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana, midday meal scheme. Everything is less than what is being allocated. Due to pandemic, schools are absent, Anganwadi centers did not run. That can be cited as a reason. But government could have found other avenues to spend this particular money. So that's why the actual budgetary estimates and revised estimates, if you observe, the government did not spend the money close to 40% of the allocated budget for the Ministry of Women and Child Welfare. This year what the government did, let us see carefully. Saksham, the Anganwadi and Poshan 2, this is the new program by bringing together integrating various other programs has been brought in. it was given an allocation of 20,000 crore rupees. So previously, for the same programs, around 24,500 crores was given. It is less than 4,000 crores. And then Pradhana Matru Vandana Yojana, it was merged with Samardhya. In this program, Matru Vandana Yojana, Beti Bachao, Beti Padavo, and Mahila Shakti Kendra, all these are been merged. All programs together also got reduced allocation. Similarly, midday meal program got reduced allocation. As I told to you, the food corporation or food security has got higher allocations. It appears so. It is due to payment of debts of the Food Corporation of India, which are off-budget liabilities existing from the previous years. So that's why really there is no increased budgetary allocation for food security. And universal food allocations are also not been spoken about, or universal programs are not been spoken out over here. So this all shows that the government's priority is not set on the nutrition and hunger. Next article is the finance minister has delivered, but the road ahead. So here the author tries to see the things from the certain other perspectives. Let me show you those perspectives. The first perspective is off-budget liabilities. It means previously governments used to do different math to keep the many of the expenditures away from the budget. It gives revenue projections in the sky, expenditure on the earth. But in reality, the things go opposite. Expenditure is on the sky, revenue is on the ground. So these off-budget liabilities are genuinely reflected in the budget. As I told to you, with regard to Food Corporation of India, what they used to do before, rather than paying money to Food Corporation of India from Consolidated Fund of India, they take it from the public account of India. And they take it from various other funds, or they ask the banks to give for FCI. And government gives assurances. And it will be realized some other years later. So, these off-budget liabilities actually shows a rosy picture about government budget and fiscal deficit. Now, everything has been brought into open. That's why the amount of fiscal deficit stood at 9.5% of GDP. And the next, capital expenditure is increasing by 26%, and especially infrastructure is getting a boost with 34.5% increase. Obviously, it is going to create certain jobs and increase domestic output. And the next reform is creation of bad bank to provide for long-term financing to infrastructure projects, which is a welcome move. And the budget also raises investments through disinvestment and also through through this sale of land assets of the PSUs. So it did not depend upon raising the tax rates. Here the author says that it is a good move because the private investments need to be attracted. Any increase in taxes will not attract the private investments. That is what has been stated here. The final article, the military seizes power in Myanmar coup. Now see this article carefully. In 1989, when the same thing happened, Rajiv Gandhi government responded differently to that. The present government just stated that the developments are of deep concern. It need not criticize any coup over here. So the NLD chief Aung San Suu Kyi, she has also been kept in house arrest. So why India's reaction is different compared to the past? First is China factor. And when India got distanced from the military junta in Myanmar, China took that opportunity to engage with them. And second, India has many military commitments. India developed a deeper relation with the military regime establishment in Myanmar. If you talk about Kaladan multimodal project, or for that extent, trilateral highway between India, Myanmar, Thailand, these are Sitwe Deep Port, SEZ. These all are being developed by India. We got a deeper connection. And it is very strategically significant to fight against northeast insurgents. Myanmar gave a lot of support to India to fight these insurgents. You know that NSCN Kaplong faction, Mr. Kaplong himself is stationed in Myanmar, and with the support of the Myanmarese army, India is able to fight back onto them. And finally, there is no public resound or clamor on the ongoing things today. In 1989, there was huge public resentment. There was a lot of pressure on Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi to teach a strong lesson to Myanmar. But no such a thing, public response exists today. So that's why this is what is the case. That's what is the Suhasini Haidar's article talks about. These are the articles for today. Thank you very much. Have a great day.